Here begins the videotaped deposition of Noreen Considine, Tape 1, Volume 2, in the matter of Jurupa Unified School District versus Noreen Considine. In the Superior Court of the State of California, County of Riverside, case number RIC 520530. Today's date is August 17, 2010, and the time is 10:56 a.m. The video operator today is Moises Lizarraga, representing Network Deposition Services. The court reporter is Veronica Vera. Today's deposition is being taken on behalf of the plaintiff and is taking place at Best and Krieger LLP, 3750 University Avenue, Suite 400, Riverside, California. Counsel, please introduce yourselves and state who you represent.
My name is Jack Clark. Clark spelled C-L-A-R-K-E. I'm an attorney representing Jurupa Unified School District. With me today is my colleague, Megan Moore. M-O-O-R-E is the spelling of her last name. Also with me today is Elliot Duchamp, the superintendent of Jurupa Unified School District.
And I'm Stephen Barrick, B-A-R-I-C. I'm here present with my client, Noreen Considine.
Would the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Okay, ma'am, please raise your right hand for me. Do you affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this deposition will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Very good. Trustee Considine, when we were here last week, we were ending the day with speaking about a letter which was sent to you under the letterhead of Best and Krieger Attorneys at Law. Do you recall that discussion?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm going to show you, I have a copy of the transcript from the deposition which was taken last week, and I'm going to show you Exhibit 8, which is a letter dated February 5, 2009. I'm also going to show you a copy of that letter so that you have a copy to work with while I work with the actual Exhibit 8. If you'll compare those two documents, ma'am. Do you remember Exhibit 8?
Yes, I do.
If you'll return to me the exhibit itself, and then the letter that you have in front of you is a correct copy of Exhibit 8, isn't it?
I'm sorry, but it's a
does-
what copy?
Does this appear to be a copy of what you've been shown as Exhibit 8?
Hold on. Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay. If you'll look with me at page 3 of the February 5, 2009 letter addressed to Trustee Noreen Considine, which has been marked as Exhibit 8 to this deposition.
We're on page 3.
Yes, ma'am. And you see that there are 5 paragraphs with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 there?
Yes.
And then at the bottom of the page, there is an unnumbered paragraph which begins with, quote, "You have at no time acknowledged that it is inappropriate for you to retain the student records, nor have you provided any assurances to the board or district staff that you will return those records and any all partial or complete copies of those records provided to you in connection with future board meetings." Period, close quote. Do you see that first line?
Yes.
First of all, ma'am, I want to ask you about your understanding of confidentiality of student records in connection with your role as a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District. Would you please tell us what your understanding of the requirements of student confidentiality as it applies to student records and specifically is student expulsion records?
To explain to you my interpretation?
Your understanding.
I
yes.
understand it.
I would object as to vague as to time as it relates to her understanding at the time this letter was sent or her understanding now.
Fair enough, counsel. As of the time period between December of 2008 and as up until January of 2009, what was your understanding of confidentiality of student records, specifically confidentiality of student records pertaining to student discipline matters?
That the information was not to be given to people who are not authorized to have it.
And could you explain that? What people not authorized to have it would you be referring to?
Well, I wouldn't, I know that all the board members are, and their families are not. Their friends are not. Their associates are not.
What about any other third parties, ma'am?
I don't know if they include other people who work on the board, excuse me, at the district. The law, let me say this again. I'm trying to come up with the correct word.
Very well.
Law enforcement is authorized to have them if a board member believes that there was something illegal done to or with a student.
And what is your basis of that understanding, ma'am?
Do you understand this question, what your basis is?
Yes. I'm trying to think of the exact right word to use. Ask me that again.
What is your basis of understanding that a trustee can provide confidential student records to law enforcement if the trustee believes that something illegal has happened?
I forget the word for that law. It's decided by the board of, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word.
Out of a sense of fairness, ma'am, I would remind you that you're wearing a microphone, and it might inadvertently, it might inadvertently be caught on record in terms of what you're speaking to your legal counsel about. Would you like to take a brief break so you can talk to your legal counsel?
Yes, that would be good.
Very well. May we go off the record for a moment, please?
Going off the record, the time is 11:04 a.m.
Okay.
Going on the record, the time is 11:05 a.m.
We're back on the record. You can answer the question now.
Yes. I rely on the black letter law and case law.
You say black letter law. Be specific. What are you referring to?
What's written in the statute?
Which statute?
I don't have that in front of me.
As you sit here today, do you know what statute it is?
No, I haven't memorized anything.
Was what provision or what section of the black letter law that you're referring to? And when you say black letter law, are you referring to a statute?
Yes.
What does the statute pertain to?
I don't have that in front of me.
Do you have the statute at your home?
Yes.
If we leave a blank in the deposition, would you be willing to fill in that blank when you review the deposition transcript?
Yeah. Is there any reason I shouldn't?
If you can find the statute that you're talking about, would you be willing to put that statute number in the deposition if there was a blank?
Yes.
And with regard to this statute, you claim empowers trustees to give documents to law enforcement. When did you find this statute?
More than a year ago.
What prompted you to look at the statute?
Well, I considered it my job as a member of the board to read the law that pertains.
Do you recall if the statute was in the education code?
I don't recall where it is.
Do you recall if it was in the government code?
I don't recall. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't memorize those things. I have a place where I can look them up.
What place do you look them up now? I'm referring to looking them up. I'm referring to the statute that you described.
In notes.
In what notes, ma'am?
My notes or my husband's notes.
Your husband has notes of what, ma'am?
Laws that pertain to issues that are of concern to either of us.
Let me understand. You and your husband keep notes of principles of law that pertain to either of you? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Did you bring those notes with you today?
No.
Do those notes pertain to the reason why you decided to keep the confidential student records beginning in December of 2008 going into February of 2009?
Do you recall? Yes. Do you remember, yes or no?
I really don't recall.
Now, you also said it was the black letter law, which you defined as statutes, correct?
Yes.
And you also said case law, correct?
Yes.
What case law are you relying upon?
I can't tell you as I sit here. I have not. I don't have them in front of me, and I haven't memorized them.
Did you review the case law or the black letter law before coming to this deposition today?
No, I didn't.
Why?
I did not plan to talk about it.
You understand that the basis of this entire action by Jurupa Unified School District is the premise that you improperly kept for a period of almost 2.5 months and perhaps made copies of confidential student records, correct?
Their complaint against me is
Yes,
only...
or, yes or no?
Oh, well, no then.
Okay. In light of the fact that you answered my question, no, what did you understand the premise of this lawsuit actually is?
That they think I made copies and have them. Have kept them.
All right, I'll break that down into a few questions then. Isn't it true that at a board meeting in 2009, you attended the board meeting and you possessed redacted copies of pupil records at that meeting?
I'm going to object as to whether or not you're talking about that question is vague. Is that in closed session or in open session?
In any session of the board. And I will represent to you, counsel, I know you've talked with my colleague, Ms. Moore, about this, that the documents that I'm referring to would not have been the subject of the board session, whether it be in closed session or open session, and therefore would not be protected by the Brown Act.
Well, I have some concern that if you're asking my client about personal recollections that she may or may not have had during closed session, that those would be privileged. So I will object that the question is vague. If you would be kind enough to split that question in half, that could probably expedite what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, I will also represent to you that last night the board took action to grant a limited waiver to the extent that there was any confidentiality on that issue, while clearly we believe there's not. So I'd like my question to be answered.
Well, I'm somewhat concerned that action took place 12 hours before our deposition, where we were about to deal with an issue that you knew was going to come up. That being said, there's case law on the point that relates to privilege, which I don't think anyone can waive for her. So I don't think this will be a problem if you split the question up. And we've had discussions off record And like I mentioned before, in order to keep the record clean and clear, if you could split the question in half, I think we could move along.
Let me try this question, ma'am. Isn't it true you made copies of the confidential student records that you obtained between December of 2008 and February of 2009?
No.
You didn't show anybody redacted copies of those documents.
No.
You never referred to any redacted copies at a board meeting.
No. No.
So you've never made copies of the student records at all that you obtained between December of 2008 and February of 2009, correct?
That's right.
So you've never provided any copies of any student records to any third parties, including any third parties connected with law enforcement, correct?
I'm going to object on vagueness grounds. Are you talking about the documents that she obtained while she was a trustee? Is
Yes.
that- okay.
No.
All right, I'll ask you some questions before I go on to the next document. I want to understand better your understanding of your duties as a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District. Is it your understanding that you have the legal responsibility to protect confidentiality of student records?
I'm going to object on the grounds that this is relevant and not the line of questioning that would produce discoverable material, but you can answer it.
I can or I should.
You can answer it.
The question again?
Is it your understanding as a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District Board of Trustees that one of your responsibilities is to protect confidentiality of student records?
I don't have access to all student records.
I didn't ask that. I asked you if one of your responsibilities as a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District is to protect confidentiality of student records.
That's too vague for me.
Do you understand what I'm referring to as student records?
If you would say what student records,
What is your understanding of what student records are?
the only student records that I ordinarily would see are student discipline records.
I didn't ask you what student records you would see. I asked you what your understanding of the term student records is.
No, yes, but no, I think, well, that's not what I heard.
Do you understand what student records mean? Does it include more than just discipline records?
Yes, I would think so.
Okay. So his question is, looking at student records as a whole, do you understand that part of your obligation as a trustee is to protect the confidentiality of all of those records? Yes or no?
No, I don't have access to anything else.
Let me start with my initial question. Do you understand what the term student records refers to?
I understand what it means to me.
Okay, explain it to us.
It means any and all records that the district has about a certain student, any particular student.
And do you understand that as a trustee, part of your overall responsibility is to assist in maintaining confidentiality of any student records?
Only of those that I have access to.
And you understand that the records that you get as a trustee concerning student discipline are confidential student records, correct?
Yes.
And when we use the term confidentiality or term confidential, what is your understanding of that?
Not to be, that the records should not be exposed to or given to or shown to anyone who's not authorized to see them or have them.
And who would be authorized to review student records, to the best of your knowledge?
The only ones that I personally know are the members of the governing board and the superintendent and law enforcement, including the DA.
And you say the governing board would have access to student records, correct?
Yes,
The superintendent would have access to student records?
yes.
What about teachers and site administrators?
I don't know. I have never talked to any of them about it.
Have you done any research on that?
I've read the case law.
Okay, based upon, and then can you tell us any cases you might have read on that?
No, I can't.
What is your understanding as to what the case law says about whether teachers or site administrators can review student records?
I didn't review those. I didn't review any case law on the other people that work in the district.
I thought you just said you reviewed case law on it.
Case law on what to do with student records, student discipline records that look to be unlawful or illegal. I guess the word is unlawful treatment of students.
You said that the district attorney could review student records? Is that right?
Student discipline records that a board member believes are, how shall I say, illegal or unlawful.
And how did you come to the understanding that the district attorney can review confidential student records that a single board member believes are illegal?
The case law that I've read.
Can you tell us what that case law is?
No, I can't.
When did you read it?
Many months ago.
What was the proposition that the case law stood for?
I don't understand that question.
Do you understand the reasoning that the courts used to come to the conclusion that the district attorney's office can review confidential student records if one member of a board of trustees wishes to provide those records to the district attorney?
I don't know.
Do you have that case law at home?
I can't. I think so.
If we leave a blank in the deposition transcript, would you please provide that case law when you review this transcript?
If I have it, yes.
Have you told us every basis upon which you believe that a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District who believes that something is happening in an illegal fashion with regard to student discipline, that trustee can then provide those records to the district attorney's office?
Every basis that you can recall right now, yes or no?
Also, the grand jury, in the same document as the DA, I recall. And there may be others in law enforcement.
Okay, what is the basis of that understanding?
The case law that I mentioned earlier.
Have you told us every basis for your understanding that you just described now?
I think so.
Have you received any legal opinions from any source that supports your position that the grand jury in the district attorney's office can review confidential student records if one trustee believes that illegal actions are occurring concerning student discipline?
I'm going to object as privileged.
Instruct her not to answer.
Yes, I'll instruct her not to answer.
Very well. Now, I'm going going to ask just a few more questions about your understanding your duties as a trustee. It's your understanding that as a trustee, you are required to protect the interests of the school district, correct?
Yes.
And in what manner did you believe you were protecting the interests of the school district when you filed a federal court lawsuit against the school district in 2009?
I believe the district was, or the people who worked for the district were not treating students the way they were required to.
Prior to filing the federal court lawsuit, did you ask for example, there be an investigation into the disciplinary practices of Jurupa Unified School District?
Did I ask whom?
Did you ask for an investigation of the disciplinary practices of Jurupa Unified School District?
I don't recall.
You don't recall if you asked for an investigation into the disciplinary practice of Jurupa Unified School District, correct?
That's been asked and answered. She said she doesn't recall.
I do now.
Okay,
We
please.
asked the DA's office.
You did ask the DA's office.
Yes, we did.
And by
I did.
DA, you're referring to the district
District
attorneys.
attorney.
When did you contact the district attorney's office?
I would say early in 2009.
When you say early in 2009, can you give an approximate month?
January, February.
And when you said we contacted the district attorney's office, who was we?
My husband accompanied me,
And who was your husband?
John McLaurin.
So you and John McLaurin went to the district attorney's office sometime in January, February of 2009, correct?
Yes.
Concerning concerns you had about the legality of Jurupa Unified School District's disciplinary procedures, correct?
Say that part about the legality.
Was that the reason that you went down and contacted the DA, because you had concerns about the legality of their school discipline procedures?
Oh, yes.
Was it only you and your husband, John McLaurin, who went to the district attorney's office in January, February 2009 regarding Jurupa Unified School District's disciplinary processes?
Yes.
No one else was with you?
No.
Who did you meet?
We met an investigator.
Who?
His first name is Nick. I don't recall his family name.
Had you called the district attorney's office prior to this meeting in January or February of 2009?
Yes.
Who did you talk to?
It might have been the same Nick or someone else. I don't recall.
Now, you showed Nick redacted copies of the student disciplinary documents you'd obtained, didn't you?
No.
So did you show him anything at all in writing? I'm referring to Nick, the DA investigator.
No.
So you and your husband went to the district attorney's office to meet a DA investigator named Nick, and you didn't have anything to show him, correct?
No.
Explain how I'm incorrect.
Pardon me?
What did you have with you then?
I had notes on what was wrong.
Who made those notes?
I did.
Did your husband make any of those notes?
No, he hadn't seen any of the documents, so he couldn't know what to say without my telling him.
Well, what did you tell your husband to say?
Nothing really. I just wanted somebody there to be my witness.
Why?
It's insurance against being misquoted.
You were concerned about being misquoted by the district attorney's investigator named Nick?
I would be concerned
Why?
anywhere.
Why?
Why not?
Where did this meeting with Nick, the DA's investigator, occur?
In the building that they have up near the 60 freeway off Market.
Do you recall the address?
No, I don't.
Yeah, are you referring to the building across from the courthouse?
I don't know about the big courthouse up there.
Well, it was the building that houses the district attorney's offices, correct?
Yes.
Was anyone else present aside from you, your husband, Mr. McLaurin, and Nick, the DA investigator?
No.
How long did the meeting last?
I don't know. It's too long ago.
Can you give an estimate?
It might be half an hour.
What did you, Mr. McLaurin, and Nick, the DA's investigator, talk about for a half hour in the district attorney's office regarding your concerns about the Jurupa Unified School District disciplinary processes?
That I had concern that the hearings were not being observed. Were not being done properly.
Did Nick, the DA's investigator, say anything?
I don't recall if he did or not.
You don't recall if the district attorney's investigator responded to any of the concerns that you raised during this approximately half-hour meeting?
No, I don't remember. I might have them written down, but I doubt that.
Now, you said that you had notes on what was wrong, in your opinion, regarding the Jurupa Unified School District disciplinary processes, correct?
Yes.
Do you still have those notes?
I'm not sure. I've internalized them and don't need those notes.
Did you leave the notes with Nick, the DA's investigator?
No, we left nothing with him.
How many pages of notes did you take with you to this meeting between you, your husband, Mr. McLaurin, and Nick, the DA's investigator, in January, February 2009?
I don't understand. Are you talking about my notes of the meeting or something else?
How many notes, how many pages of notes did you have with you?
The notes that you brought to the meeting with you, if you
Oh,
can
I
recall.
don't remember. It's a year and a half ago.
Well, how did the half-hour meeting that occurred in January, February 2009 with your husband and Nick, the DA's investigator, end?
It ended with him telling us that we would hear from them.
Did you ever hear from Nick, the DA's investigator?
No.
Did you ever call him to find out why?
Yes.
When did you call Nick, the DA's investigator, to follow up as to why he hadn't called you?
I can't say. I don't know.
Approximately when?
Weeks?
So would it have been approximately February or March of 2009?
Could be, yes. It could be. I don't remember the exact date or even the approximate date.
When you called Nick, the DA's investigator, to follow up on your meeting with him, was your husband, Mr. McLaurin, on the line?
No. No.
So this conversation on the telephone happened just between you and Nick, the DA's investigator, correct?
No, there was no conversation.
I thought you said you called him.
I called him and left him a message.
Did he ever call you back?
No.
Did you ever follow up to find out why?
No.
Now, you said that you called Nick, the district attorney's investigator, and left a message sometime in February or March of 2009, correct?
I said a couple weeks after the first meeting, which was probably in January or February.
Did you keep Nick's, the DA's investigator's, telephone number?
I don't know if I still have it.
It would still be in the records that you kept concerning this issue, this matter, wouldn't it?
It might.
Would you be willing to do a search to try and determine Nick, the DA's investigator's telephone number?
No, I think it would be easier to call the DA's office and ask for his number. Easier on me.
I'm sorry, easier on you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes, it is. Yes, it would be easier on me to call and find out if they've got anybody named Nick working there still than to go through all my notes looking for a number that may not be there.
What did Nick look like? I'm referring to the district attorney's investigator.
Average height, Caucasian, light hair. Not old.
Can you give me any other description?
He said he was a former policeman.
Can you give me any other description?
No.
So after you left a voicemail for Nick, the district attorney's investigator, in approximately February or March of 2009, did you follow up with anybody else from the district attorney's office regarding any concerns you had regarding the disciplinary practices of Jurupa Unified School District?
No.
Did you call any other person connected with any investigatory or law enforcement body concerning the concerns that you had about Jurupa Unified School District's disciplinary processes?
Yes, I called the Department of Education.
When did you call the Department of Education?
I don't know. I don't know what time, when it was. It was after the DA.
It was after you had talked with Nick, the district attorney's investigator?
Yes.
So that would have been sometime after approximately January, February of 2009, correct?
Probably.
Who did you talk to? And by the way, was this a telephone call?
It was a telephone call, and I was given an address to write to.
Who did you speak to? And by the way, when you spoke to a representative of the California Department of Education, was it a direct call to them, or were you on a conference call with your husband, Ms. McLaurin?
It wasn't California.
It
I
was-
never said California. I said Department of Education.
You're talking about the Federal Department of Education?
Yes, I am.
And when you called the Federal Department of Department of Education, was your husband on the line with you?
No.
Who did you talk to at the Federal Department of Investigation?
Of education?
Did I say education?
No, you said investigation.
Excuse me. Who did you call at the Federal Department of Education?
I don't recall who I talked to because that person gave me an address to write to.
And did you write the Federal Department of Education?
Yes,
Did you keep a copy of your letter?
I think so.
Would you provide us a copy of that letter?
If I find it.
Would it be on your computer database?
No,
Why?
I've changed hard drives since then.
What information did you provide to the Federal Department of Education concerning your concerns regarding the disciplinary processes of Jurupa Unified School District?
I asked who to contact.
What were you told?
I was told to write to the Department of Civil Rights.
And you did so in what month of 2009, ma'am?
I don't know.
Did you ever get a response from the Federal Department of Education?
No.
Did you ever make any telephone calls to find out why you didn't get a response?
No.
Why?
If they're not interested, I'm not going to get anywhere with them.
Well, did the fact that the Federal Department of Education didn't respond to your letter give you or suggest to you that perhaps the disciplinary processes of Jurupa Unified School District are proper?
No.
Why?
It meant to me that they didn't want to be bothered.
Do you know if the Office of Civil Rights for the Federal Department of Education has an investigatory function?
Say that again, please.
Do you know if the Civil Rights Division of the Federal Department of Education has a investigatory or enforcement responsibility?
I do not know.
What research, if any, have you done in terms of the powers of the Federal Department of Education with regard to school districts?
I don't recall who pointed me to the Department of Education.
My question was, what research, if any, did you do into the investigatory or enforcement powers of the Department of Education with regard to school districts?
Do you remember if you did any? Yes or no?
No, I got given that address and I sent a letter to it.
Okay, let me ask the question this way. Why did you contact the Federal Department of Education in 2009?
To find out if anybody would do anything about our situation.
Let me try and ask the question this way. Why did you contact the Federal Department of Investigation as opposed to any other government agency?
I don't recall. No, I don't recall.
Did you contact the Federal Department of Education during the time period that you had custody of the student disciplinary records which you obtained in December and January and February of 2009?
I can't be sure.
Did you use the information that you obtained from the confidential student records that you obtained in December, January, and February of 2009 and December of 2008 to provide you with information that you shared with the Department of Education or the District Attorney's Office?
Do you remember?
Well, just information, not specific information to the case, but the information of the overall deficit. Oop, yep. Not to the specific problems with any one student. I had enough to go on with generalities that pertain to every case that I've seen.
And that was generalities that you, concerning information that you'd obtained actually prior to becoming a trustee, correct?
Yes, I did.
Just so I'm clear then, even prior to becoming a trustee, you had enough information concerning how the disciplinary practices of Jurupa Unified School District were implemented to have allowed you to contact the District Attorney's Office and the Federal Department of Education before you became a trustee, correct?
It's a compound question. It's vague, but do you
I'll
understand?
break it down. I'll break
Okay.
it down. Before you became a trustee, in your opinion, you had enough information concerning the disciplinary practices of Jurupa Unified School District to have allowed you to contact the District Attorney's Office, correct?
Yes.
And before you became a trustee, you had enough information to give you concerns or to form a basis of concern about the disciplinary practice of Jurupa Unified School District so that you could have contacted the Federal Department of Education, correct?
Yes.
So why did you keep the student disciplinary records that you obtained in December 2008 and January of 2008 and February of 2008 and not give them back until almost the end of February 2009? Excuse me, let me say that again. I misstated the years. So why did you keep the information you got in December of 2008, January of 2009, and February 2009 until almost the end of the month of February 2009?
I was looking for a law enforcement branch that would be interested in this situation.
And why?
Well, crimes against students.
What crimes?
Okay. In student hearings, the panels were selected by the, he's got a long title, the employee of the district who's called the director for, no, I don't know what he's exactly called. It was Mr. Eimers, and he had a title that was rather convoluted and wasn't really on target. It's now somebody else. The superintendent's somebody or other for discipline.
I asked, go ahead and keep explaining. I asked you what crimes against students.
Okay, well, didn't you ask me by whom?
No, I asked you what crimes occurred against students.
Okay. The hearing panels that I observed were very hostile to the student and the student's side of the issue. One person in particular was very concerned with Mr. Eimers and agreeing with him and him agreeing with her. They tended not to listen to the student's side of the story or to his witnesses. On one student, the district had some people sign affidavits of what happened regarding this boy.
No, you say on one student. When did this occur?
I think 2007.
Okay. Please go ahead.
It's sometimes a long time between when a student is kicked out and when he has a hearing.
I think this question calls for a narrative. Could you just, the problems with the discipline process was you found it was unfair to the student?
Actually,
extremely unfair.
Actually, my question was the witness.
What crimes? Can you enumerate in 5 words or less what crimes you saw or had concerns about?
The witnesses said things that were untrue, and under questioning.
How did you know they were untrue?
That's what I'm going to say next.
Okay, please.
After we asked them questions, it turned out that it was quite different from what they had signed on their affidavits.
When did this occur?
Oh, sometime in 07 or 08.
That was before you became a trustee?
Yep. I wouldn't have been a non-attorney advisor to a student after I was on the board.
Why not?
I think it would be a conflict of interest.
Okay. So your belief that a witness saying something that was inconsistent, and by the way, was the witness an adult or a student?
Most of them I'm talking about are adults.
And were the adults who testified in these student disciplinary hearings that you observed as a student advocate, were those adults staff members of Jurupa Unified School District?
It's an advisor, not an advocate.
Okay, advisor.
Were they, you asked me, were they something of,
Were they staff members of Jurupa Unified School District, ma'am?
yes.
And your belief was that the staff members who testified in these hearings in 2007 or 2008 before you became a board member, that they were saying things that were untrue because what they said was not exactly the same as what they put in affidavits?
I wouldn't say exactly the same. I would say they're completely different.
And so your conclusion is that they were lying?
One time or the other, yes.
When you say one time or the other, what do you mean?
Well, one of the statements isn't true.
Well,
Either the affidavit isn't true, or what they said in while they're being cross-examined wasn't true, or maybe neither one was true. But they couldn't both be true and say exact opposite.
Can we
Excuse
take a
me.
break?
Yes.
Going off the record, the time
Oh,
is
wait, wait, you gotta take that.
11:49 a.m.
Can't take
Jack,
it
can I
with me.
talk to you?
Going on the record, the time is 11:58 a.m.
Ma'am, I believe that just before the break you were telling us the basis upon which you believe that there were crimes committed against students in Jurupa Unified School District, correct?
Yes.
Aside from what you've told us before, is there any other basis you have to believe that crimes have been committed against students by staff or administrators, teachers of Jurupa Unified School District?
Giving false testimony. Yes.
And you just described that, correct?
I just described some of it. There's others.
All right. Would you please describe the other incidents? Be specific as to, and you can be very specific in terms of what happened, when it happened, and who was involved, and from a staff perspective, and I can move on.
Okay. Well, in the case of the young man who was accused of carrying girls around but wasn't allowed to cross-examine them or even know who they were.
Now when was that, ma'am?
It was the last one we did, so it might have been 07 or 08. Probably was 07 or 08.
Okay. Please go ahead with your description.
In his case, I think they're called counselors, told him to go outside and sit down and write up what he did bad. And didn't tell hme he had any right to have an adult or a lawyer or anybody else there. She just told him to go outside and sit down, write what you did that was bad. And she told him what he did. He was carrying around girls, didn't want to be carried around. So, to be a good sport, he did that. And then she took it and wrote around in the top and on the side. And what we got was a typed copy of both what he said and what she said, as if he had said it all. And we brought that up, and she said, "Oh yeah, well."
How was that a crime?
To misrepresent what somebody said, to say he wrote this, he confessed to this, when he did not.
And let me just be clear. Is it your position that actually he denied carrying girls?
Oh yes.
He said it didn't happen.
That's right. They wanted him to stipulate that he wouldn't do it again, and made sure that he told them he couldn't do that because he didn't know what it was that he was accused of, since they wouldn't tell him who, if anybody, had complained against him.
So you believe the counselor committed a crime?
Now that's different. That was the counselor that wrote stuff on his, whatever this form was, and had it all typed up as if he had written all of it.
And you believe that's a crime?
Well, yes. Yes, they're about to pitch him out of school for this.
Well, why didn't you go to the district attorney's office when that occurred back in 2008 or 2007?
I guess it didn't occur to me that nobody would do anything about it. Nobody in the district would do anything about these things. And then when I got on the board...
No, my question was, when the incident concerning the young man who was accused of carrying girls around occurred, why didn't you contact the district attorney's office at that time?
I guess I didn't think of it. His parents, I can't remember what his parents wanted to do. We did what his parents wanted to do. I told Mr. Armours that we had no reason to believe that there ever was such an event. We didn't have any time, we didn't have any place, we didn't have any girls. So why would we believe that this guy was carrying around girls against their will?
But
And why didn't I go to the DA?
No. You said there were crimes against students. Just tell me what those crimes specifically were, who was involved, and when they happened, and I'll move on.
This, I don't remember the counselor's name. I'd know her if I saw her. The date, it must have been 07 at the latest, because they were talking about November. These things happened in November, and they happened at the...
Ms. Considine, I think what counsel was trying to ask you is what incidents, what crimes, and what date? For example, 2007 false testimony against a student under oath, something like that.
Yes, multiple.
Okay, what date approximately?
Approximately November 2007. But plus or minus a lot, because I don't have this with me. I haven't looked at it in a long time.
Any other instances, ma'am?
Well, let me think. The people on the panel did not listen to what we had to say. They had their minds made up. All of the people that they brought in as witnesses were recanted, essentially, their affidavits. What they said was different.
Ms.
So
Considine,
big time
is this the same incident, that 2007 false testimony?
Yes, there was
Okay,
false testimony.
Is there another one?
Yes, there's one that we got wind of it from his mother after he had already been expelled.
I'm specifically asking you about your statement that you believe that Jurupa Unified School District staff has engaged in crimes against students.
Yes.
Be specific and tell me what those are.
Lying about him, lying about what he did.
Who's he?
The person whose name we're never supposed to use. We're not, a student named...
No, don't say the name. You can describe the circumstances. Are you still talking about the young man who carried girls around?
The young man who was accused of carrying girls around.
Okay.
We found out what was the truth. Not about girls. We don't know who they
I
are.
have just a second, just a
Wait a
real
minute, wait.
quick second.
Wait, I just want to say it.
Okay.
It boiled down to girls jumping on his back for piggyback rides. That's not his fault. They wanted to expel him for giving girls piggyback rides.
So the incident that you've described had to do with a young man who was accused of carrying girls around, correct?
Picking them up and carrying them around and against their will. Yes. To be more specific, yes.
And you believe that the staff actions of Jurupa Unified School District in that matter were criminal, is that right?
Yes.
Explain to me why, and I'll move on.
We discredited all of the district's witnesses, and the people on the panel were very hostile to us and voted to expel him, in spite of none of the witnesses having...
Why is that a crime?
Oh, the kid didn't do anything to deserve that.
Do you have any other reason for your belief that a panel, in this instance where there was a young man who was accused of carrying girls around, that the panel voted to expel him? Do you have any other basis for asserting that was a crime?
I would need more time to think about all the other things that they did, but yes.
Any other instances, ma'am?
Well, what we get as board members is even less than what the panel got.
Do you believe that's a crime?
It could be, if it's not
What-
accurate.
Explain what you mean.
Well, we don't get to read affidavits. We don't get to talk to witnesses. We don't get to see evidence. We don't get to see the student. By see, I mean have him come into the room and speak to us and us speak to them. And
But ma'am, my question is, are any of those things crimes?
I think they are.
Why? And what criminal violation?
Absence of due process.
Okay. On what do you base your assertion that the manner in which expulsion hearings and the engagement of the Board of Trustees at Jurupa Unified School District is criminal?
We don't have enough information to make a big time decision like that.
All right. Anything else?
About what?
Any other instance? If you can't remember, it's okay to say that's all that you recall at this point.
It's all the specifics I recall.
So you've just told me every instance that you are aware of where you believe a crime has been committed against a student of Jurupa Unified School District in connection with a student disciplinary process, correct?
What I've observed, yes.
Okay. Now, you still have in front of you the February 5, 2009 letter
Yes.
from Dina Harris of the Law Office of Best and Krieger, which is Exhibit 8 to this deposition, correct?
I have this February 5th letter in front of me.
Now, you see in the very last paragraph in the middle, which states, quote, as such, the board has determined that your student discipline binder will be kept in the district office for you to review on-site in the superintendent's office during regular business hours, which are 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. You will be notified by email as soon as your binder is ready for your review, period, close quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
Since February of 2009, have you gone in and reviewed the disciplinary files of students?
No, I have not.
Why?
Because I won't go into that building without a witness on my side.
Okay, just so I'm clear, since February of 2009, actually you haven't reviewed any student disciplinary binders containing confidential student records, correct?
I have not reviewed them.
Do you see on the fourth page of the District Exhibit 8 to this deposition, February 5, 2009, and this is the fourth page. It has just a short paragraph on it. States, quote, again, with respect to student records currently in your possession, if you do not return the student disciplinary records to the district as requested, the district will consider seeking injunctive and declaratory relief in a court of law. Do you see that?
Yes.
And isn't it true, ma'am, you did not return the binders that you obtained in December of 2008, January of 2009, and February of 2009 until after the board voted to initiate legal proceedings against you?
No, it's not true.
Do you recall the date that you returned the binders?
Yes, February 19th.
And isn't it true that the board had met earlier that week and voted on taking disciplinary action against you?
If they did, it was a violation of the Brown Act because I didn't know about it. I wasn't told about it.
So you weren't in a closed session meeting where you asked to step out of the room and the board voted to initiate illegal proceedings against you?
Not on this, no. They did later, but not on this.
Well, isn't it true, after this February 5, 2009 letter, you actually wrote a letter to the superintendent explaining that you didn't intend to return the documents, correct?
I don't remember that.
I'd like to have marked as Exhibit 9 a letter dated February 16, 2009. It's a two-page letter which on the second page purports to have the signature line of Captain Noreen, Considine, member of the governing board of JUSD, which I believe refers to Jurupa Unified School District. And counsel, here's a copy for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you recognize this letter, ma'am?
Yes.
This is a letter that you wrote to the superintendent of Jurupa Unified School District on or about February 16, 2009, correct?
On or about, I didn't hear the date, he said.
February 16, 2000.
February 16th.
This is your letter, correct?
Yes.
And you wrote everything on here, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall the content of this letter?
Not all of it.
Okay, take an opportunity to read it and let me know when you completed reading the letter you wrote in February of 2009 to Elliot Duchamp.
Yes.
So you're done reading the February 16, 2009 letter which you sent to the superintendent of Jurupa Unified School District?
Yes, I am.
Did you write everything that's contained in this letter?
Well, some of it is taken from public documents.
I understand. For example, you refer in the first paragraph to a treatise on California Government Code Section 54963.
Yes.
Did you obtain that information regarding the government code and the provisions of law that you cite from your own independent investigation?
Yes.
Now, a few questions about this letter, and then I'll be just asking a few follow-up questions. I think I'll be just about done. In the paragraph, which is about 2/3 of the way down, which begins with, quote, the here and above reference to, quote, making a confidential inquiry or complaint to a district attorney or grand jury has been expanded by the courts to include law enforcement agencies, both federal, state, and relevant administrative agencies, among them the California Attorney General and the United States Department of Justice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you make that statement to the superintendent as of February of 2009, ma'am?
Do you remember?
I don't remember specifically. No.
So you don't know why you cited the provisions of law that you cited here and provided them to the superintendent of Jurupa Unified School District?
I have an idea of why I would.
Okay, please
Not
tell
sure
us.
if that was my overriding concern.
Please tell us.
To make sure that the superintendent and the members of the board who disagree with me on everything and agree with him on everything would realize that there is another course of action other than suing the district or doing nothing.
Well, as of February of 2009, you'd already decided to sue the Jurupa Unified School District, hadn't you?
No.
When did you decide or make the decision to initiate a federal district court lawsuit against Jurupa Unified School District?
The lawsuit was, what's the right word to use? Given to the court on March 2nd, I believe, or 3rd of 2009.
No, my question was, when did you decide to file a federal district court lawsuit against Jurupa Unified School District, the district upon which you sit as a trustee?
Oh, what date did I decide, gee, I'm going to go out and file a lawsuit against the district?
Yes.
I don't recall that.
Was it before or after this February 16, 2009 letter?
I believe it was after.
As of February of 2009, had you retained legal counsel to consider filing an action against Jurupa Unified School District?
I'm going to object on the grounds that that's
Yeah.
privileged.
I don't know.
I don't think the date that she obtained counsel would be.
I'm going to object, but you can answer it. If you had retained counsel at this point.
I don't recall.
Well, you recall who your legal counsel was who filed the lawsuit in March of last year, correct?
Yes.
And who was that?
Richard Ackerman.
But you don't recall when you initially contacted him about filing a lawsuit against Jurupa Unified School District, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then turn to page 2 of Exhibit 9, which is the February 16, 2009 letter.
Oh, wait a minute, this is something. Well, I got this 2 pages. Wait a minute. I have 2 pages, and then I have 4 pages here.
That's a different exhibit.
Is it?
You're talking about the February 16th letter?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
this one.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Say again where you wanted to me to.
I just
notice.
asked you to turn to page 2.
Okay.
And do you see the first paragraph of your letter, which states, quote, "In anticipation of legal proceedings, a request was delivered to your office and to this board for preservation of student records which were in your constructive custody and/or control." And then you go on to state, subsequently, those same records were destroyed, went missing, or otherwise unavailable when requested by law enforcement. Do you see that statement by you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Does this refresh your recollection that at least by February 16 of 2009, you were already anticipating filing a lawsuit against Jurupa Unified School District?
At least on paper.
Explain what you mean by at least on paper.
I'm calling their bluff.
I'm sorry? Explain that.
Calling their bluff.
What do you mean calling a bluff?
Somebody who takes a position that he thinks the other side will give in, but does not anticipate following through on his, I can't think of the word I want to use, on what he has said.
Okay, explain to me what you just described as it relates to what you wrote to the superintendent of Jurupa Unified School District on the top of page 2 of Exhibit 9, the February 16, 2009 letter.
I did not want to sue the district.
Then why did you say you were anticipating legal proceedings?
Well, I did, because he did not do as I asked, which I felt was thoroughly reasonable, to preserve the student records.
Explain what you mean, preserve what student records?
Okay. The ones that went through the discipline process.
Explain what you're saying. Specifically, what records were you concerned about were destroyed?
Student discipline records, when the student either quits or gets off of, is returned to school, the records are destroyed.
Do you know why?
I was never given a reason.
Did you ever ask why?
Yeah.
Who did you ask?
I asked the superintendent.
You asked Mr. Deshawn?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever get an answer?
Not to that. He didn't answer my letter, my verbal request.
When did you make this verbal request of the superintendent, ma'am?
Before I wrote this letter.
When?
I can't say.
So, as a trustee of Jurupa Unified School District, you don't know why student disciplinary records might be shredded after a student's disciplinary obligations have been completed?
Well, I have an opinion.
Okay, give us your opinion.
My opinion was so that no one could no one could sue the district or anyone in it for what it was in the record, because it was gone.
Why did you form that opinion?
Well, we asked him to keep one that we returned, or that we were, no, one that I was a student advocate, non-attorney advocate, asked him, Mr. Duchamp, not to destroy it, to keep it as evidence for future. When the student's father asked for it, he was told it was gone, it wasn't around. It wasn't there.
Was the father told why the records were no longer available?
No, he wasn't. He was told, so sue the district.
Let me understand. So have you, aside from asking the superintendent, have you asked anybody else as to why student disciplinary records might be shredded after the student's obligation under the discipline had been completed?
I might have asked another board member.
What about anyone with the California School Boards Association?
No.
By the way, isn't it true that the student you're referring to actually graduated, and that's part of the reason why his student disciplinary records were shredded?
Yes, he did graduate. In fact, he was taken off of expulsion after we intervened. My husband and I intervened.
And has it been your experience that some parents are concerned that student disciplinary records concerning their children might be left in the file and might be disclosed at some point in time in the future?
No one has ever said that to me. No one has ever said they were concerned about that.
And isn't it true that the young man you referred to just now, who you stated graduated, isn't it true that actually his expulsion was never completed?
No, his expulsion wasn't completed because of the arm wrestling that we did with Mr. Eimers and Mr. Duchamp.
When you say arm wrestling, You brought up concerns about the process, correct?
Yes.
And because of the concerns you brought up, the expulsion didn't go through, correct?
The expulsion was not completed because we would not stipulate to anything, and we wanted to talk to the board about it.
Ma'am, all I'm asking is, when you were a non-attorney student advisor, you raised concerns about a student's expulsion process, correct?
Yes.
And as a result of the concerns you raised, the student wasn't expelled, correct?
That student was already expelled.
All right. I'll go along with what you're saying. In your opinion, the student was expelled at the time, correct? Is that yes?
Yes.
And as a result of the concerns that you and your husband raised, the expulsion, to your recollection, was overturned, correct?
Yes, it was.
Doesn't that give you an indication that somebody was listening to your concerns?
I don't think it wasn't our concerns, it was their concern about themselves.
All right, let me just ask a few more questions about this letter of February 16, 2009. Do you see, it would be the third paragraph which states, quote, "The records which you seek to recover from me."
Which page? On the
Second page of the
February
February
16?
16, 2009.
And the first word on the,
The records which you seek.
okay,
I'm quoting now, quote, "The records which you seek to recover from me are safely in my custody and control, and that of a law enforcement agency entitled to receive them," period, close quote.
it's or, not and.
Excuse
Control
me,
or that.
or that of a law enforcement agency entitled to receive them, period, close quote. Is that right?
Yes,
Did I state the sentence correctly now?
yes,
So as of February 16, 2009, you still had all the student disciplinary records from December 2008, correct?
well, from December 2008 through February of 2009.
Okay. So you had all of the student records that you received, the confidential student records you received between December of 2008 and February of 2009, correct?
Yes,
And you understood that at least 3 to 4 times before this letter which you wrote on February 16, 2009, you had been asked by email and in writing to return the records, correct?
that's correct.
And you refused to return them, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you also say that, or suggest, that you had provided records, confidential student records, to a law enforcement agency entitled to receive them, correct?
I did.
Which law enforcement agencies did you give student records to?
None.
So why in the letter to the superintendent did you allude to the fact that you had provided student records to law enforcement agencies entitled to receive them?
I wanted them to do something other than what they were doing and what they continued to do and what they felt comfortable in doing.
Explain
on
that.
Student records. They're being handled the same way they were then by the administration.
Well, in open session of any board meeting, did you ever ask, why are there policies of destruction of confidential student disciplinary records?
I'm trying to remember what I did ask. I know I asked some questions, but I don't recall.
All right, just a couple more questions, and I think I'm done. You see at the bottom, near the bottom of the page, about 1/3 of the way up, it says the reference to, quote, see also 20 USC U period S period C period, section sign 132 G B 1 capital letter A. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
When you say that the reference to that code section I just quoted is, quote, unadulterated subterfuge and poppycock, close quote, what are you referring to?
I don't recall.
All right, your last paragraph I want to read, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions about it. Your last paragraph, and by the way, at the bottom of page 2 of District Exhibit 9 to this deposition, the February 16, 2009 letter, is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
Do you see where it says, quote, for one not in elected office and in violation of state penal code or federal criminal code, intent must be proven for conviction. For one in elected office, no proof of intent is required, and there is no requirement for them to know they are doing wrong. For those board members ensnared in your intrigue, I have urged and do urge that they seek legal counsel and ask the relevant questions, period, close quote. What were you referring to there, ma'am?
That certain board members think they're immune from the law. They think they can do as they please, and nobody can get at them.
I'm referring to, you did refer to some board members, but you referred to, quote, for one not in elected office and in violation of state penal code or federal criminal code, intent must be proven for conviction. For one in elected office, for one in elected to office, no proof of intent is required, and there's no requirement for them to know they are doing wrong, period, close quote. Why were you making that assertion?
So that they would know that the superintendent could do things, and he might get off, but they would not.
And what specific things were you concerned about in the final paragraph of your February 16, 2009 letter?
Well, as I've said before, things that were done to students that were unjust.
And those were the things you observed as a non-attorney advisor to students, correct?
Mostly, yes.
When you say mostly, yes, why do you use the term mostly?
Because the discipline records, as we see them, as the board sees them, are much different than what the hearing panel sees. It's much more, I don't want to say consolidated. There's much less there.
All right, let me ask you these few last questions then. And by the way, just to be clear, there's no other reason you believe that the disciplinary process for Jurupa Unified School District is a criminal process, in your opinion, correct?
I didn't hear your last few words.
Aside from what you just said, are there any other reasons why you believe that the student disciplinary process for Jurupa Unified School District is essentially criminally tainted?
Well, there are things that I didn't say.
Then tell me now.
Well, in the student discipline records that you referred to from December, January, and February, December 2008 and January and February 2009, there's supposed to be a 3-person panel for each student that goes through the discipline process. And in some cases, one of the people on the panel was the superintendent's discipline, whatever he is, was Mr. Eimers at the time, or maybe it was Mr. Doboshansky, I don't remember now, was one of the panel members, where yet he is the person who gives out the what the panel members act on. In a couple of cases, the translator was also on the panel. So when with the superintendent's agent and the translator on the panel, there's really only one member that's qualified to be on a panel.
And do you believe that's criminal?
Well, the kid gets found guilty of whatever it is they wanted to
My
charge
question
with.
was, do you believe that's criminal?
Can be, yes.
Why?
Because they're misrepresenting what they do to the student as being within his due process.
How is there a misrepresentation, ma'am?
It is a misrepresentation for the superintendent's director for, I can't remember what it's called, the one who has all the information and puts it into this case that comes before the three-person panel, impartial panel, supposedly, to determine whether this should go farther or whether he should be let off.
Why is that a misrepresentation?
Well, because he has more information than that.
I'm not sure what you mean he has more information. When you're referring, for example, Mr. Eimers, you don't recall his position?
I can remember the name of it.
Okay,
It's
Mr.
something
Eim-
discipline. Okay, go. I'm sorry. Go.
No, Mr.
Sorry, go ahead.
Eimers was a staff member for a number of years with the Jurupa Unified School District, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall his first name?
No, I never called him by his first name.
Okay.
But it
Do
wasn't
you-
as a staff member that I'm referring to. It's as the superintendent's something or other for discipline.
Okay. Well, why, in your opinion, would Mr. Eimers being on the panel make the panel in some way flawed?
Because he's got a conflict of interest. He's the person who calls the panel and gives them the information they need to make the case.
How is there a conflict of interest?
He's working on both ends.
Explain that.
I don't know how else to explain it. That he's the person who is in charge of this discipline. Am I speaking English?
You think there's a conflict, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a conflict. There's a conflict when he's been the only person on the panel. It's a conflict when he's been one of two and one of three.
And do you think that taints the process? Yes or no?
Does
Yes.
what? I didn't hear you.
His perceived conflict taints the process in
taints.
your
Oh,
mind,
yes.
yes or
Oh,
no?
yes. Yes, indeed.
And so you believe if a person sitting in the position of Mr. Eimers, as you call him, sits on the panel, that makes the panel's decision criminal?
It's a yes or no question,
Yes.
yes or no?
And have you told us every reason why you believe that?
Have I told what?
Have you told us every reason why you believe that?
Yes or no?
No.
Okay, tell us every reason, please.
I don't have them written down. I don't have them here in front of me. I don't know.
Have you told us every reason that you're aware of as of today, ma'am?
As of today?
As of
you
today,
said.
yes.
Now, my final questions. You understand that as a trustee, you are legally required to protect the interests of the school district, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever advised any staff member of the school district to sue the school district?
No.
Have you ever met with any staff who had been either terminated or disciplined by the school district in an effort to find out what the concerns are and give them any advice with regard to complaints they might have against the school district?
Would you say that again? That's very long and
Let me
convoluted.
break it down. Have you ever met with any disciplined or terminated members of the district staff?
By met with, do you mean in a formal meeting or just introduced?
In any form where you spoke with them about their concerns?
No.
Well, you're aware that your husband was passing out copies of a complaint that was made on behalf of numerous either current or former employees of the district, correct?
Yes.
Did you encourage him to do that at all?
No.
Did you ever discourage him from doing that?
No. I mind my own business.
Okay, we'll just take a short break. I'll just check my notes. I think we're just about done.
Going off the record, the time is 12:47 p.m. Going on the record, the time is 12:53 p.m.
Just a couple of follow-up questions and then I'm done. Trustee Considine, have you told us all the situations where you believe there were, in your opinion, crimes against students at Jurupa Unified School District?
All that I can think of at the moment.
And do you believe, aside from what you've told us, there have been any other criminal acts on the part of staff of Jurupa Unified School District?
I wouldn't know about them. I would not know about them.
Okay, so have you told us about every situation where you believe a staff was committed by have you told us about every situation where you believe staff of Jurupa Unified School District has committed a crime?
Actually not.
Okay, please tell us.
Well, back in 2001 or 2002, my student was expelled for making a bomb and setting it off in school. And his mother was very, very frustrated and felt helpless.
Was that the situation with the water bottle and dry ice that you told us about last time?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you've already told us about that situation, correct?
I have. Well, not under oath, but no, I have. I have told you about.
What do you mean not under oath?
Well, we didn't do it. Did we do it in deposition previously?
Yes, we discussed this.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that was the case. Okay.
If that's all you can remember at this point, you can answer. That's all you remember at this point.
I remember that the his name is Ignacio something or other. I can't. Ignacio?
Is that a student's name?
No, he's a student counselor, I think, and he told the hearing panel. He just retired last June. I don't remember his last name. I'm sorry. That he saw the debris field from the great explosion of the water bottle and the dry ice. There's 500 pieces scattered around.
I think we covered
Oh, we did that?
this.
And that there are not two pieces of bottle?
Wait, hang on.
Okay.
Just, other than what
Ignacio?
is there anything else that you can remember at this point? Yes or no?
No.
Very well.
I'm going over old stuff.
I have no further questions at this time, counsel.
Okay.
Would you like to ask any questions of the witness?
I have no questions.
Very well. Then I would propose the following stipulation. That the second volume of the transcript of the deposition of Trustee Considine be sent on an expedited basis in light of our pending trial date to counsel for Ms. Considine. That the witness, rather, be allowed to review the record make any changes or modifications she deems appropriate. And Trustee Considine, I would remind you that if you do make changes or modifications to the written transcript, either I or other counsel in this case can comment on those changes or modifications at the time of trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. And that within 5 business days of receipt of the second volume of the transcript of the deposition of Trustee Considine, that counsel forward the original transcript to my office for safekeeping, noting any modifications or changes that the witness has made on it, and I will hold the original transcript of Trustee Considine safekeeping until trial or other appropriate proceeding in this case. Is that acceptable, counsel?
Yeah.
I'll stipulate to that.
Very good.
Started speaking.
That's okay.
Thank you very much, Trustee Considine, for your patience in attending these 2 days of deposition. We're done.
This marks the end of
Can you
videotape
this
1,
back?
volume 2, in the deposition of
no.
Noreen Considine.
Skip.
Going off the record, the time is 12:58 p.m.